This week's Parsha is Parshas Vayera. It's that God appeared to Abraham. Now, Vayera is very interesting. There's a famous story that the Rebbe Rashab, when he was a young boy, 4 or 5, he came to his grandfather, the Tzemach Tzedek, and he said, "It's not fair." He was crying actually. Why would God appear to Abraham and not appear to me? So his grandfather, said that when a Jew, a tzaddik, has a bris at the age of 99, he deserves that God should appear to him. But everything exists in a lesson in life. Everything in the universe, everything that ever will and does happen to us is a lesson. So what is the lesson that God is continuously communicating to us? And the lesson is as follows. There are many different types of revelation. In the beginning, the very first, if you want to call it 2,000 years, was a time of concealment and darkness. Our sages say for 15 generations the world existed in darkness. Abraham came in and began to become light. Our sages teach us that the entire universe has a kind of very interesting relationship between light and darkness. Light is revelation. The same room exists whether the light is on or not. But the difference is if you can see it, if you have confidence, if you're walking around, if you're bumping. So God, in a way, is light. It's like if you're on a ship, but you don't know where you're going, it's darkness. It's not that anything has changed, but if you have a destination, you have a confidence of direction, everything becomes bright. So the world, without knowing why it exists, without knowing who you are and why you are, is very, very dark. But if you change the picture and have the same exact world, but understand exactly why you exist, it can become very, very bright. And so Abraham is the first one to ask that question, which is, why do we exist in the first place? And God comes to Abraham and he says, Lech lecha, which is really the answer to existence. That your existence consists of two basically souls. You have what we would call your consciousness, your animal soul or your life soul, your body, your sense of self, but you also have another soul, which is literally part of God, and that's why the Hebrew word for mazel is similar to the word nozzle, which means that the energy comes down because your soul, sourced in God, is the source of your life force. But the question is, how do you access your internal life force? How do you actually access your truest self? Don't live on your lowest self, which is basically made up of instincts, obviously some convictions. We obviously have a conscience, but at the same time, we also have an ego that can get very angry. All the evil and all the good that happened by people. So that means that people can, unfortunately, when either jealous or provoked, can become quite sadistic. So if we have these different parts in us, how do we access the pure, infinite goodness part of us without anything bad in us? And that's really the greatest question that life has, and that's the question that God answers. That in order to get to your infinite good self, you have to be able to let go of your identity of the self which we create as I am this body, which is, what is that body? It's basically a collection of instincts and an ego. Like we said, we have some good parts too, but we also have bad parts. So if I just include everything I feel as being me, well, that's me. Well, that's not good because there are bad parts of me that I don't like. Then if we go a little further, we get to the consciousness that even the identity that we might have as a I belong to this family, and therefore when we're young we don't actually think about if my father is behaving correctly or not. It's too scary to think that. We just think everything he did is fine, and we just assume that that behavior is fine. Or the country, we do the same thing to our country and to our leaders, but you have to step out. As the Rebbe says, even if you're born Chabad, you think everything Chabad does is fine. It's not like that. You always have to go beyond your grow, basically beyond your childhood perception of reality. And then the only way to get to the infinite reality, to the soul, which is God, which is you, is to El Ha'aretz. You have to be willing to go to the desire, to the place that God will lead you, to understand that if we're all on this boat, well, you can make the captain of your ship God. And when you do that, then God becomes one with you, and that is the life you lead. And of course, you should share this with others. If we all had the captain of our ship God, we would have a very, very godly, good world.